Hello, Reds from around the world. Welcome to Off United. I'm your host, Joe O'Neill. Thank you so much for joining us here on whatever day it is that you are listening and watching this, because this is a pre-record, so I don't know when this is going out, but whenever it is, I hope you're having a good day, and I hope you're over a certain result which happened against a certain team close to Birmingham. To us, it's far too soon, but hopefully when you're watching this, it'll be a million years away. But we are joined by two wonderful guests today, the wonderful Stu Woolley, I finally got the name right, and a lot easier name to say, but I'm sure he'll say it in some weird Swedish way, the terrific Phil O'Connor. So wherever you are, sit back, relax. We're going to be doing a Christmas review, just covering basically all the top teams in the Premier League and discussing how they have progressed over this what was festive period for most and not so festive for others. So sit back, relax, and we'll see you back right after this introduction. Sound.
Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hi folks, and we're here to talk with the wonderful Premier League and the what was somewhat wonderful festive period with Stu. And actually, Phil, I want to hear you. What is the Swedish version of your name?
Oh God, there wouldn't be one. I mean, the horrible part about it is, like, if you take Philip, as we would say it, or Phil, as you pronounce it, so Philip. I was like, oh, fucking hell. And then I actually mentioned my name in Irish on a podcast here once, and ever since then, every soccer fan in the country calls me Pillabo Crowher, which is magnificent altogether. So it's great to have the Swedes speaking Irish.
Yeah, you're slowly getting there. You're slowly getting them there.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have them all converted. But in fairness to them, they came over with the Vikings and influenced the Irish language. So, I'm finally getting one back, after the Battle of Clontarf when Brian Boru was so mercilessly slain. So, we're not the kind of people to hold a grudge, the Irish, but if we have a chance, Yeah, a bit like Manchester United fans, in fairness to them.
Yes. And good reference, a good way to bring us on. Stu, we'll go to you first. First of all, I hope you had a good Christmas.
I did, yeah. The family had a great time. I think we were woken up about 7 o'clock, which is, unusual because the girls
in the evening.
At the minute. Well, yeah. And so, pretty good actually. It's just gone a little bit too fast this year. I was expecting it to be a bit more elongated, but it wasn't. So, but no, excellent.
Not for me, because I was in isolation. I was supposed to be flying back to Ireland on the 23rd, and I got COVID on the 21st, and I had to isolate for 10 days. And now 10 days went as slow as you could possibly can possibly comprehend, except I was really drunk for most of them, so at least they were enjoyable.
Well, I think Twitter definitely knew you were on in isolation.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah.
Day one of isolation. Today I got my book out.
Oh, well, I didn't get my book out. I got a few things out though. But Stu, we'll come to you first, since we are. We'll say your Christmas period went too fast. I think last night's game certainly felt like it went on forever, and we didn't get a result that we hoped for. But touching on this game before we go into it, what are your thoughts on United and Wolves? That was the most recent Manchester United game. Whenever you guys are watching.
Yeah, look, I made a point about 8 months ago about player responsibility and how the players have got to look at themselves and how the players have got to, get their fingers from out their arse and start playing and start taking responsibility for what they're doing in a football match. And all of a sudden, the penny is dropped with 99% of Man United fans, and it looks like Luke Shaw from his post-match interview. There's nothing you can defend, unfortunately, about how we played yesterday, because whether or not you like tactics, whether or not you like coaching, or whether you just like football in its purest, Bruno Lage's team came with a game plan and executed it perfectly. And they knew each other as teammates. They could predict each other's moves. They knew where the ball was going to be played 2 or 3 yards before it was even released. And they took Manchester United completely apart. And we just looked totally disjointed. As a unit, as a group of players, we looked disjointed. We didn't just look disinterested. We just looked disjointed. And I've said this once, I'll say it a million times. A group of professional footballers that are playing the game since they, were 5 years old, have been coached by professional coaches since they were 8 years old, are playing football daily. They are doing something with a football daily, and still to this day cannot affect a game of football. Is beyond any comprehension I have as a player myself, and as somebody that will go out tomorrow night and kick around with a group of friends of mine and a five-a-side, and we'll do everything to win, because I fucking hate losing. I'm a bad winner, by the way, but I'm an even worse loser.
That's the Brit in you.
Yeah, and then you've got multimillionaires, and I know people talk about, well, it's actually, it is. When you look at today's day and age, and your average household bill is going to go up tenfold by the looks of it for for your food, and your energy and that. And these guys can't even be asked to put on a performance and a show for 76,000 people who spent their hard-earned money, and it is hard-earned money for these kids in there, a lot, and they can't be bothered to turn up. It's phenomenal. Now, again, I'll go back to it. As much as you like coaching, tactics and execution, it really comes down to 11 players who work together as a collective, who've got that absolute will to win, can look at their fans after the end of the game and salute them, and the fans will salute them back. You look at our group of 11 or 13, 14, whatever you want to call it, can't even look themselves in the eyes, let alone our fans. And they've got big problems. Raniak's got big problems. The fans were calling for Ollie. It's all Ollie's fault. The coaches don't know what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. Please tell me what's changed. I would love to know what has changed from the start of the season to where we are today. Now, you can go on about Raniak, you can go on about Ollie, you can go on about anything else. The players are the ones that affect and apply what they're being told, and they're not doing it.
Phil, we'll come to you. Great point there, Stu, first of all. Now, Stu says there hasn't been enough change, we're still not playing good football, and all those things that he said very, very eloquently. But if you look at the last 5 games prior to that Ollie managed, we got 3 points. And then for the most recent 5 games that Rangnick has in the Premier League, his first 5 games, we have 10 points from 15. So the results are certainly better. The performances aren't. Is there progression happening here? Is it just that we are living in that modern age where everything needs to happen right now?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the progression that you're seeing there is that the side is slightly more organized in terms of they actually know what they're going to do defensively when they go out there. But it's exactly as Stu says. There's still, I think the scale of the task that is underway at United is now beginning to be realized by fans and by the club alike, right? The problem, to a certain extent, was that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was quite naive as a coach. He wasn't as knowledgeable as what Rangnick is. Rangnick is one of the most knowledgeable coaches in the game, and it still makes very little difference, right? Forget results. The one thing, and I hate to go against, I can't remember who it was that said it, but results in football actually aren't really that important, right? If you have the best players, the most well-paid players, and you put them together well, they'll actually win more games than they lose. It's that simple, right? But the performances are so poor. I mean, to go up against Wolves last night, Wolves is the sort of team, really, they're kind of predictable. Nobody said, fuck me, I didn't think Wolves were going to do that last night, right? But if you have better players, which ostensibly on paper Manchester United have, then you win that game 11 times out of 10, right? But if those players aren't committed to that cause, and this is the big problem, and this is why you can probably expect a bloodbath at 2 clubs now as soon as the January transfer window opened. I think Manchester United and Newcastle United are the 2 clubs that are going to go, look, at fucking take any of these clowns, any of them whatsoever, right? Because they're just no use to me anymore. Rangnick is one of those guys who knows exactly what he wants to do but cannot do it himself. And the reason Manchester United don't look like a Ralph Rangnick team is because they don't want to. They don't want to do what he's telling them to do. They don't want to make the sacrifices. They don't want to put the work in. They don't, they're putting themselves before the team, right? One of the greatest misnomers in modern sport is that soccer's a team game. It is not. It is 11 individuals out to make as much money as possible before the end of their all too short careers, right? The idea that you can pull them together, in some cases you can do it. Guardiola sometimes manages to do it. Sometimes at Bayern Munich they can be brought together, at Juventus. But always at the end of it, they're talking about very, very strong individuals. And that individual is what has gotten them to Manchester United. That individual desire of Cristiano Ronaldo is what made him one of the greatest players, not just in Manchester United's history, but in the history of the game. But at the same time, And I'm not laying this at the feet of Ronaldo, and I don't have any interest in the debate of, are United a better side without him? He's one of the best players in the world still, regardless. But you need people to go out and to do things, to play, again, the cliche of 110%, the kind of thing that Roy Keane gave you and that Paul Parker gave you, and, the players going back through history gave you, and they're just not doing that. There's too many players thinking, okay, well, I'll wait for my chance, and we all know players who sort of hung on the shoulder of the last defender, waiting for that perfect through ball. We all know defenders who sort of stood off waiting, now is my time to shine, I can make that sliding tackle, but who didn't want to make the 40-yard run to close down the space so that the ball couldn't be played in the first place, right? So this is about United's players doing the things, the intangibles that cannot be seen and that won't be reflected on a stat sheet and that won't be reflected in a next contract offer. Nobody has any interest in doing those things at United right now. And until they have players who are interested in doing that for the badge and for those 76,000 fans and for the millions, if not billions of fans around the world, then this is going to continue.
Absolutely.
I think the first time anyone's mentioned Paul Parker on this show.
Again, such an underrated player, and there's so many players. I mean, Dennis Irwin is almost overrated. He's that underrated. Do you know what I mean? And that's why Parker was so solid and so consistent. I chose him specifically here. But there's so many great players. I think Michael Carrick probably got an awful lot of stick in his time. So he doesn't score goals, and you don't see him all over the pitch. But again, he just does that. He keeps the team ticking over the whole time. And again, I wouldn't put him up there in the pantheon of Old Trafford greats, but he's certainly one of the better midfielders that's played for the club.
Well, what Carrick did, and I made a point in this on the review show last night. What Carrick did brilliantly, he knew his yardage between the centre halves themselves. He knew the yardage between the centre half and the goalkeeper. He connected the back four, so to speak, and I'm talking about the quartet of your central midfielder, your two centre halves, and your goalkeeper. Matic hasn't got that. He had it. He just doesn't put his head on a swivel anymore. When Matic takes the ball, he's got no idea how far Varane is, behind him. He's got absolutely no idea. He doesn't know whether he's 2 yards or 20 yards, and that is a big problem with a central defensive midfielder. Kante is a great exponent of it. He's brilliant at driving forward, but when he's in defence, he's always looking around. He knows exactly where everybody is. So when he takes the ball, he knows if he can go left, he knows if he can go right, or he knows he's got enough yardage, space, to play it back to Silva or whoever. And one of our biggest problems is, and I brought it up before, and it's got glossed over again, and it sounds really, really strange, is De Gea. Is De Gea in goal. He's absolutely brilliant as a shot stopper, but he doesn't command the box. And the problem that Maguire's had, because people are on Maguire's back at the moment, the problem that Maguire has had, and when you go back to when Henderson, Maguire, Lindelof were playing together, you could get away with the Fred issues and the McTominay issues. We weren't conceding as many goals because the three of them were communicating, and Maguire, Lindelof, they knew wholeheartedly that if the ball was over the top, Henderson's cutting off at least half the yardage between them, the striker, and the goalkeeper. They don't know that now, so they're desperately playing way too deep or way too high. They can't find the happy medium as to where they need to be. And this is and the fans at the moment are having a right go at Maguire with rubbish in defence, etc., etc., etc. It really stems from that quartet. It really does stem from that quartet. Communication of those four is absolutely pivotal, and we haven't had that this year. And it's a real shame. And that's one of the issues. And if you look at the way that Wolves were set up yesterday, and Phil, you're absolutely right. They didn't do anything that you, me, Joe, or any fan who understands football, they didn't do anything differently. They hit the fullbacks because they're always going to hit the fullbacks. That's how they play. As soon as Trincao and Podence was brought in, you knew what was going to happen. You knew exactly they were going to play. And by hitting the fullbacks and our deficiencies in the middle, it gave the likes of Moutinho and Neves an absolute field day. I mean, come on, Neves and Moutinho. I think Moutinho could have tied his boots and still put a 10-yard pass in because he had nobody around him to stop him. McTominay had his brilliant game against Burnley. He goes missing now for 6 games. We've all seen it. We've seen it. I mentioned it on the Burnley preview, and unfortunately I was proven right. Matic, his positional play, it just isn't there anymore. He doesn't know where he is on the pitch. And so for Moutinho, Neves, I can't remember who else was in there. It wasn't Dendoncker, was it? So they brought somebody else in. I can't remember who it was. But ultimately, it's a field day for them. they were just laughing. Neves wasn't even out of breath. Then there was Martino. They weren't even out of breath. They were getting the ball. They controlled the play.
And don't forget that Neves wasn't deemed good enough for us either. But as we were saying, Phil, I'll come to you. Yeah, Phil, I'll come to you in this one. Everyone blamed Ollie. Everyone said it was on him and the remedial coaching staff, and that he was the main issue to not be able to get the best out of the players. What we're learning now is, and what has been said, is that the players just either aren't good enough or haven't got the right mentality to be at this club to give 100% and work for the manager. And my question is, and that's so deep rooted into the club, like I know there's impossible to say a quick fix, but what is the next step? Where do we go from here?
I think there is actually a very quick fix, Joe. And it's one of those things it's kind of intangible, but it's the one thing that, if you were to implement this in the morning, you would see a marked change the way United play, right? The vast majority of those players are good enough to play for Manchester United. But the one thing that when I watch Manchester United, and I watch them a lot, the one thing that I see lacking is courage. Now, what is courage in football? Courage is wanting the ball when there's somebody in your back, right? Courage is doing the right thing when people see, but also doing the right thing when people don't see, right? Courage is making those extra few yards. It's taking responsibility, right? Now, with Manchester United, the fans have seemed to want like a scapegoat, somebody that they can kick at when things are going wrong. For a while, it was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's gone now. Rangnick has his honeymoon period. So Harry Maguire has taken over what Billy Connolly used to call the blame hound, the dog you have under the table. And when you fart, you can blame the dog, right? So that's Maguire at the moment, right? But this is not an individual thing. This is a collective failing of the club as a whole, and not least of the 11 or the 15 individuals that represent the club on the pitch. I don't see that courage. And, if you go back to John Giles, when he was playing for Manchester United before he went to Leeds, he always talked about this. It's like he talked about sunshine footballers. He talked about fellas who were able to play the game from Monday to Friday, but then a Saturday afternoon at 3:00, they were nowhere to be seen, right? And we've all done it. We've all been in a tough game. If you play the game at all at any level, we've all hid behind somebody not wanting the ball in the 80th minute when you were fucking out of breath and you knew you couldn't do it. We've all done that. And it, like, once that comes in, it's so infectious. It's the Omicron of football, right? It spreads itself throughout the team and everybody becomes paralyzed. So what you're saying about Matic there, Stu, is very, very true. But the reason his head is on the swivel is he doesn't bother looking because he knows nobody is there, right? He knows nobody is shown for that ball, right? So he's looking for the easy ball back. He doesn't want to look at De Gea. De Gea's confidence could be built up early in every game by knocking an easy ball back to his feet. That he has at least two options there. Nobody wants to give him those two options. So when he gets the ball back, it's because he has to get the ball back, and that's when everything goes to shit, right? So courage. If you had a group of players who were willing to stay, like we're all staying in this. We're staying until June. Nobody leaves unless we're forced to leave, and we're going to sort this out between ourselves. In American sports, they have what's called players-only meetings, right? Where the coaches are locked out of the dressing room and they beat these things out by themselves, and players call each other out and they say, well, you did this and you did that, and you don't do this and you don't do that, and you're out with girls all the time, you're out drinking, whatever, and they get it out of the way. And you'd actually think that, this is the kind of thing, it sounds so basic, right? But we're dealing with people that are at such a high level here, international footballers, many of whom have a great reputation in the game, like Ronaldo on down. Harry Maguire, let's not forget, made it to the final of the European Championships. Whatever you think of him as a footballer, the man has a capacity to play the game at some level, right? But without courage in football, you're nothing. You are literally, you cannot win anything. And often it comes down to the fact that courage will beat class, which is what happened last night. Wolves had a game plan and they went out and they believed in it first and foremost, and they stuck to it secondly. Nobody thought, I am better than the team, therefore I will win this game on my own, right? And again, that's not a dig at Ronaldo or Rashford or anybody else. Nobody thought, I'm more important. I'm going to take over here and everybody's going to look to me and I'm going to be brilliant. Nobody thought that. They knew that without a collective effort, they were losing last night, and they put in that collective effort. And it sounds like such a simple thing to say, but I honestly believe that if you look at Ragnick's coaching philosophy down through the years, it is about that collective. It is about that sense of courage, and such a simple thing that could so easily be done before whatever game is next. But I honestly don't know if the players have the character, if they have the belief anymore, if they have one eye on the exit, if somebody's had, an offer from Saudi Arabia or the Emirates or Japan or something to go and play there. But they need to sort it out really, really quickly, because I come back to the fact over and over again, certain clubs like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, Liverpool, Manchester United, they're just too big to go in there and think that you're better than the club, or that you're better than the fans that you're playing in front of. That nobody will ever be bigger than these clubs. Nobody will ever be given bigger than the game. And you have to respect that fact. And if you don't respect that fact, get the fuck out of here. I don't want to see you. I don't want to see you play. I don't want to hear from you. Respect the game and go there and do what you have to do to win it.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And I think the fact that Paul Pogba's had an offer on the table from United since July, that he's humming and hawing over signing, and Real Madrid apparently have pulled out last week. But it sort of says everything, that when a player can be kind of like, oh, I don't know, and still be treated with the height of respect by the club and still have a contract there when his contract is up in July, kind of says a lot about the standing, because in Ferguson time, and I know we shouldn't always harp back to that, but there would not be a player allowed to sit on a contract offer for 6 months. If Ferguson was still here, Pogba would have been sold, even at a loss, he would have been sold last summer.
I mean, he should be in a Newcastle United jersey by the end of the week.
He probably
There you go. There's a heap of money,
yeah.
son. Do what you want. You know.
Yeah. I mean, courage is the word that I used when I was coaching my lads team. You know, courage is a basic word, isn't it, Phil? It's every time you cross that white line, you've got to have the courage to carry the ball. You've got to have the courage to put in a tackle. You've got to have the courage to put your head in the face of adversity in the 6-yard area. Me, the amount of times my goalkeepers fucking clean me out. I mean, literally fucking punch me out the fucking way so we can get the ball. You don't see that anymore. You don't see any of this aggression. We lack aggression. Our whole team lacks aggression. You know, that game last night was clearly crying out for a disruptor. Somebody to get in there, smash Moutinho early doors, smash Neves early doors. And it's up to you. Are you going to stand up to me, or are you going to wilt? Because you've got two choices then. If you're going to stand up to me, great. But I'm going to make you think now, every time you've got the ball, you're going to be looking around for me first. You fucking... Because that's how I used to play when I was playing central midfield. I wasn't the most skillful player by any stretch of the imagination, but fuck me, you'd never get round me. You would know every time you got the ball, fuck, where is he? Because that's... And we don't have that in the modern day game.
But I think, Stuart, one of the most important things, like, again, there's very little time for self-reflection in football, right? They can be very, very fragile. And, if we criticize them, I know players watch these things and, and you have to be open, you have to be honest about it, right? If they do well, you have to give them credit for their skill and for their class and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But the one question for me, for every athlete, when they walk back over that white line and when their competition is finished, the one question that you should honestly be able to ask yourself is, did I do everything possible to win that competition? Right? Now, I do not care if you won or lost. I literally could not care less if you won or lost. The only thing I can ask from any athlete in any sport, in any team, is that you do your best. Because once you do that, you've done all you could. Then it's up to the coach, it's up to somebody else, it's up to your teammates, it's up to whoever else. But if you have the slightest little doubt, now it could be that you didn't, it could be that you have an injury, it could be that mentally you're not in the right place, but be honest with people about that and say, no, I didn't do my best. I didn't get out of what I put into it, and I need to do that better next time around. But this thing of going, I think, who was it? Luke Shaw last night who said, I don't know if if we were all in there together. Luke, I'll tell you now, you weren't, right? There was so many people thinking about doing other things. And again, that's the single question that not only should be able to ask that of yourself, you should honestly be able to ask that of everybody else. Because if you can answer yes to that question, then you have the moral authority to pose it to other players in your team, and they've got to answer you as well. If you didn't, you need to shut the fuck up. You don't have anything to say to anybody else. But it's really, really simple. I mean, at the bare bones of it, in terms of social hierarchies and all these kinds of things, we all know the power structures that are in there. We all know that Ronaldo's going to have somebody's ear in the dressing room, not least the younger players and the coaches above them. But at some point, everybody has to be held to account, and you either do that from the top down or you do that within the group itself. And it's not happening, because if it was happening, you wouldn't see performances like that.
No, that's right.
But touching on what Stu said on aggression, we're gonna move on to a team that make me very angry currently, which is Manchester City. And I'm going to throw this out there, okay? And I think I will be shot down. I think Stu is on the same emotional level as me, but I think Phil can look at it as an objective observer and be like, no, this is actually the case. So Phil, I would prefer if you just didn't speak on this at all, because I want to speak lunacy and I want to just speak nonsense. But Manchester City, okay, I don't think it'll ever be proven, but I think once the financial fair play thing that got ousted, I think they are fundamentally destroying the game. I don't think that just because they're winning everything, but I think it's because they've such a powerful political movement that I think that they will get the biggest. I know they always say big clubs get big decisions like that, and I understand that to an extent, but it is an actual travesty as to how City can continuously get the second-rate teams at every cup competition, how they, including the Champions League, because I know it's a different level, but obviously they're Champions League level team, but they always get a second-rate team, and how they will just consistently get these ridiculous VAR decisions. And there's no one that is saying anything, because I don't think they can say anything. But for me, especially when the financial fair play thing got thrown out of it, there was something going on. But aside from that, how do you think the game went with them and Arsenal in their Christmas period? I'll go to you first, Phil.
I actually covered that game. That was the first game of the year I covered. So I was really lucky this year. I didn't have any of the Boxing Day games or anything. And that game against Arsenal was the first one. And I was writing for the Reuters news agency afterwards. And I went, well, 2022 has started much and all as 2021 finished. Manchester City are still winning and VAR is still a huge controversy. And that was exactly how it turned out. I mean, Arsenal were amazing. They actually played them off the pitch. You know, they took the lead and everything. And it was like, Arsenal looked absolutely brilliant. But then, and they actually scored after that. So Odegaard went down in the box and there was no foul given. Ederson came out, cleaned him out. Now, if you look at the rule book, in the modern day rule book, somebody's referred to it in the chat room we have as a modern day penalty, right? But the problem was that Ederson was careless, right? And as a defender or as a goalkeeper, you can't put your foot in there, you know, in that sort of careless manner, because it's so dangerous, especially when Odegaard's foot was on the ground. Now, he did the right thing, left on the ground, pulled it up because he wanted to avoid injury. It should have been a penalty, right? But it didn't even go to VAR. And this is the thing. And like all the Arsenal players were saying afterwards, going, look, we don't mind losing the game, but consistency, you know, consistency is what they're looking for. And then, of course, you know, things go the way they went for City. Arsenal have a man sent off. Arsenal are always going to be Arsenal. So even if they were 5-0 up, they were going to lose 6-5. They would just contrive to do it because that's who they are at the moment. I would agree with you in a way, Joe, that, you know, they are a hugely powerful club. And, you know, I think there is that idea in the back of your referee's mind that, look, they're just going to win anyway. So I may as well just go and have a look at this. You know, if they don't score here, they'll score somewhere. I do think, though, that, you know, not only do they get those sort of, you know, hometown decisions, even when they're playing away from home, but you also have the thing that they do have the best players and they are so well organized. So, you know, if you look at the way they scored their goals, even against Leicester when they beat them 6-3, the goals they scored were all different because they got a couple of penalties. There's all sorts. Just the way they can vary how they play the game, because they have courage and because they have that sort of intellectual level. They play football first and foremost with their heads and not their feet. You know, they're actually playing clever football. Arsenal are doing there, but they don't have they're getting there, but they don't have the players to do that with just at the moment. But that was like, it was kind of annoying. And then when Liverpool go and draw with Chelsea 2-2 and that kind of thing, you just run up the white flag. Let's just finish this season now. Do something else. Let's have some knockout competition. I don't know, celebrity death match. Do what you want to do, because they are going to win it, you know. And literally the only thing that's going to keep me interested for the rest of the season is what's going to happen at Manchester United and Newcastle United. They're the only two things of interest. But, you know, one thing I would say, though, is, Joe, if you go back to when Newcastle were competitive under Kevin Keegan, it was kind of the same thing. So you had Keegan bringing in, you know, David Ginola, Alan Shearer, Les Ferdinand, Faustino Espria. They had some great homegrown players like Robert Lee. They brought in Darren Peacock from QPR, Shaka Hislop, John Barnes. They had some really good players, but they played, you know, they were able to pay more money than everybody else, so they were able to get the best players. Blackburn did the same thing when they won the league, but their star sort of burned out very, very quickly. They didn't have that sort of, you know, the bottomless pockets that Manchester City have. Now, if there is one bright side to Newcastle United, and to me there are none, you know, about the Saudi takeover, to me there are none. But it is the fact that, you know, you have somebody with the economic muscles, you know, and again, Manchester United have them, Liverpool have them to a certain extent. But, you know, if Newcastle United over the next year or two can start to challenge them, because ultimately then it becomes a sort of an arms race in terms of getting the best players. But, you know, I don't know, it kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth because they are such a great team. Raheem Sterling is such a great player. So is Kevin De Bruyne. Gabriel Jesus, I don't even know what he's doing there, but somehow, you know, he manages a couple of flashes every game, you know. So they are good to watch, but just when everything else goes in their favor, you're just looking at God, you know what, there's just no beating these.
But Phil, on like Jack Walker when he owned Blackburn, like that was a hometown, like that was. I don't mean like just because they're from outside of England, obviously they're not as good supporters, because we look at I can't pronounce the name, but the Leicester City owners, especially who passed away, like and the level of dedication they put into the city and to the club, and the love they have for the club, and also the fact they get their money from not, interesting ways, we'll put it. But we look at that, and then it's just falsifying City's history. And the same thing would happen with Newcastle. It's I don't mind. I'd never had a problem with anyone buying the club, because although if no one bought any other clubs, then United would win the league still, probably be United, Arsenal, and Liverpool would just be top three, and there would be no top six if no billionaires come in. And like, it is a good thing no matter where it is. Who would give a shit about the French league? across the board, it is better having more money across more clubs. Absolutely. But unfortunately, when they come in and just whitewash the history and just make them out to be what they're not, like, look, it's embarrassing that they're putting up statues for Company and for David Silva, because I remember myself and Stu many months ago had a chat about this. I asked who would you put up a statue for United? Like, Fergie's up, Bobby, like the whole Trinity's up, Sir Matt Busby's up. Who would you put up? And as far as I remember, Stu, you said no one, because the people who should get a statue are people who fundamentally change the club for the better.
Yeah, we said Jimmy Murphy, if you remember. We said Jimmy
Murphy. Sorry, it was Jimmy Murphy.
But you were talking. You were talking about modern day players.
Yeah.
You were talking about modern day players, and I made the point that there's no modern day player that's added to any history of the club. He will do in 20 or 30 years' time, but he won't do it now. What I like about what you just talked about, Joe, is you're spot on about the history of Manchester City. Manchester City was founded from local people. The Kipak stands. There would be local people. There wouldn't be any foreigners in there. I'm sorry to say, I don't know. I'm probably going to get shot now for that. but what I'm saying is, it was local people. It was the granddad, the dad, the grandson, and it was famed for it. And so, the Abu Dhabi group have come in. They've got no idea about the struggles of Manchester in the 50s, the 40s, the 30s. They've got no idea of the struggles when City were down in Division 4. They've got, couldn't pay their players, and they've got an old legend, Franny Lee, who had to bail them out, and he took them as far as he could. And, they don't understand that. And I think if you truly got a real City fan and you sat him down and you asked him what he really feels about Abu Dhabi and Sheikh Mansour and that, I don't think he'd wax lyrical like many people think. I think he'd really look at it as where they come from. They were born in 2008, this Manchester City. That's such a shame that, everything is forgotten about it. It's all 2008, and that's a real shame. And Phil's right, and you're right, that, currently right now, do we like what Manchester City stand for? Absolutely not. Do we like their politics? No. Do we like the amount of money? No. Do we like their team? No. Can you respect what they do? Absolutely. Yeah. Right. As a talented group of professional footballers who do play the game in the right way, they're a little bit sharky when they need to be. Raheem Sterling will fucking dive if it's a nil-nil. They're sharky. I like that about them. They're wonderful footballers. They've got great players like Bernardo Silva, I think has been their standout player this season, who wanted to leave in the summer. Pep said no, or they couldn't get an offer. He didn't cry. He didn't go on strike. He just got on with it. He's been one of their best players. They've got lucky with VAR. You're absolutely right. The decisions, they're getting lucky. Whether that's got something to do with the power and the stranglehold they have over UEFA, because they clearly do. They clearly do. We'll never know. But you can't help but admire them, and that's what grates me the most.
No, they're the best. They're the best run club in the world, no doubt about it. And I just hope that they never ever win it. Them and PSG and Leipzig and Newcastle and Liverpool for different reasons. I hope they never ever win a Champions League or another Champions League in one clubs.
There's just one point that Stu made there, or sorry, that you were making, Joe, about this thing about statues outside the ground, right? Yeah. The whole reason the Qataris buy them, or the Saudis buy Newcastle United, is because they're trying to tap into that history. I think it's outside of James's Park. There is a Jackie Milburn, and maybe there's a statue of Alan Shearer.
Jackie Milburn, and Shearer, I think,
Yeah, so now it's English football is a little bit different, right? If you're outside the Staples Center in Los Angeles, they have some statues of great NBA players there. Shaquille O'Neal is there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is there, Jerry West, who's actually the if you look at the NBA logo, that's Jerry West, that's his body. Right? These are people who didn't just transcend the club or deliver great success, but they transcended the whole game, right? Did fucking Vincent Kompany ever do that? And look, you know, I'm just no. You know, David Silva, the same thing. You know, I always get the feeling what David Silva was. You know, he was that, but like he was so much better than that. But you know, he just looked. He had this languid style. He looked very lazy there. And we should be very, very careful of this historical recasting. If there is any value to the Manchester City brand or to Manchester City's struggle at all, it is the struggle. It is that thing of up until 2008. And you know, you're right, Stu. They were a white working class club, right? They were still, you know, 8 quid in, 10 quid in the terrace kind of thing until very, very recently. People wouldn't go and see them. But unless you can answer the question, who is Mike Summerby or who is Franny Lee, I don't think you should be buying a club like that because, you know, if you remember, when Alan Ball was there as manager, they were this perennial sort of gritty. Like everybody actually liked them an awful lot more then than what they did now. Now, Stu says we grudgingly respect what they do. It's the same thing with Paris Saint-Germain. They were actually quite a proud club, and now all this sort of tarnishes it for me, you know. And it's part of the modern game, right? As long as we have a situation where you can just go in and open your wallet and buy success like that. I remember, I'm not sure if I told you this story on the show before, but I don't know if you remember who the rogue trader is, Nick Leeson, the man who broke Bearings Bank. Right?
I remember Nick Leeson.
Lost hundreds of millions of dollars back when that was still money. Even the Queen's savings went up in smoke, right? But after that, when he was let out of prison in Singapore, spent 6 years in prison in Singapore, he met an Irish woman, Joe, and he moved to Galway. She's a hairdresser, lovely woman. And he still lives there, but he was the chairman of Galway United. And I go over there and interview him on occasion, go, what are you doing here? I said, well, if you think about it, if you buy Galway United and invest in them, you can actually get a place, you know, like a chance for a place in the Champions League much easier than if you buy Wolves. Right, which made economic sense at the time, and it was the most horrible thought I've ever heard anybody express about football. Because and no, that wasn't what he was doing, but he was just expressing that if I was a businessman kind of thing, right? He wasn't doing it, but Qatar heard that. Abu Dhabi heard that. Saudi Arabia heard that. And to a certain extent, the Glazers heard that and the Crafts and everybody else, you know. And that's the hard part for me, is reconciling this game that we grew up that was worth nothing, right? The revenue that came in was the ticket revenue through the turnstiles of Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock and a pie at halftime, right? There was no huge TV deal. And there was no, it felt to some extent that we still owned the game. Now it feels like, you know, we're just consuming it. We're paying money to be watching this kind of thing and to have opinions on it. And it's really, really difficult. But sometimes, you know, you'll just see this stroke of brilliance. And it might be from a young English player, a young Irish player, it might be from Adam Ida, it might be from Raheem Sterling, but that's what keeps us in there. And that's kind of like, you know, when you give up, you know, a drug like heroin or something like that, just one little fix will bring you back in. And Jesus, if they don't do it every week in the Premier League, I
have to say, guys, we have to. I'll let you make another point in that, but we do have to talk about the what has been the festive.
Let me make this segue, Joe, if I may.
Absolutely,
because Phil's absolutely right. Once in a while, you get this nugget that absolutely blows your mind away. And I'm going to say Phil Jones. And I know, Phil, you'll agree with me on this, and I know you will. Phil Jones was by far our best player yesterday.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something about him. The way that he just walked onto the pitch as if he did it 2 days ago. The way that he conducted himself in training. I did it 2 days ago in the 15-minute warm-up. The way that he played the game is an absolute inspiration to anybody who wants to aspire to be a true professional footballer. And if I was 8 years old and I'd be like, Dad, who's Phil Jones? I'd want my dad to tell me about him, tell me about his story. You've got a guy who hasn't kicked a football in anger in the first team for 2 years and you wouldn't know it. Now that's a fucking professional.
That's courage too.
A lot of credit. He deserves a lot of credit. Does Phil Jones?
I think that's a perfect way to finish a talk on Manchester City. But I do completely agree with your thoughts.
I just had to get that in because
I agree with you. I do agree with you.
Right. Phil was right about. There's a moment of brilliance from a young British player. Harvey Elliott, I think, would have ripped up the Premier League this year if he hadn't got that ACL at Liverpool. I think he was phenomenal for Liverpool. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And that's what we want to see again, isn't it, Phil? That's what you're getting at. That's what you're missing.
Yeah.
Today's modern game is missing. And I just
you can put up with everything else just if you have that, you know?
Yeah. Phil Jones rolled the years back. He took us back to 90s, 93, 94, about how the stature of the man, a true... Anyway, I could go on about that for a while. I think he's highlighted.
To just cover the last two teams that we're going to be covering in depthly, as we'll say, for the last 15 minutes or so. But luckily enough, they played each other the other day, which is Liverpool and Chelsea. So I was in work, but I had one eye on it the whole time. Incredibly interesting game. It was great to see Queevy and Kelleher you know, it's a weird thing where I'm like, I want Liverpool to lose, but also keep a clean sheet. It's a difficult thing I have going with me when there's a young Irish player playing for anyone, but especially Liverpool. But they're basically playing for who's second and who's third, isn't it?
Well, no, with Liverpool a second, that's done now. That is. City,
do you think so?
Yeah, it's done now. It's look, they're both shite. Let's get it out there. They're both rubbish. We hate the fucking no. Look, take a step back, and from a football purist, from a pair of eyes, it was a scintillating game of football. Absolutely brilliant. There was mistakes galore, but there was a lot of absolute brilliance in there at the same time. So that type of game. Now, let's not dwell on the Mane incident because we all know on this panel he should have gone. So let's not even debate that. But what I'm saying is that set the tone of the game. It set the tone of the refereeing decisions. It set the tone of the VAR decisions. It sets the tone as a player because I would have gone all out for Mane. And I'd have chased him all over the fucking pitch to get hold of him. You know, and it set the tone to what turned out to be an absolute scintillating game of football. In the first half, the second half was okay, but the first half I think drained not only the players, the managers. I think it drained the fans as well. I think it drained everybody. That first 45 minutes, the Liverpool goals were, I thought, conceived brilliantly. I hate to say it, I'm just going to throw up now, and the Chelsea goals. A bit of luck, really. I mean, Kovacic, I'm not having it that he meant it. He's just swung it. I'm just not having it. He's just swung it. I think it came off the top of the bottom of his shin. I don't actually think he caught it cleanly. But look, if you don't have a go in football, you never know, do you? Yeah. And it just, I mean, Keller had no chance. And as for the second goal, Kante just managed to get his foot into the ball, and okay, I thought Pulisic took it well, but what on earth was going on with the Liverpool defence in the second goal? I mean, this great player, which Van Dijk is, we all know he's a wonderful player.
Okay, you doing that, mate, confuses me. To be
well, no, but he went missing, didn't he? The great man went missing. I mean, you know, if you remember the ball into Pulisic, I mean, I know he had to rush his shot, but he had acres of space when he collected it. It was, and of course, don't forget the best right back in world football was nowhere to be seen at that point as well. So, look, if I was to look at it from the two teams, it's a better result for Chelsea for us to draw one apiece. I think Liverpool are gone anyway. I think they're way better. The disappointing thing for me was that when you look at Liverpool's injuries and COVIDs and all of this kind of stuff, they've still managed to go to Chelsea and come away with a point. I don't know the last time Keller played. Was it the first time?
During the week. He plays all League Cup games, so he played against Leicester. Yeah.
It looks like Liverpool have got a really good keeper on their hands. I thought he was solid. His hair didn't move, though. I don't know what product he puts in that.
I mean, you said you wanted solid.
Yeah. if it grows hair at the same time, if Keller, if you're watching this, if you just email the product that you put into that mop of yours, because I don't think it moved once. I thought it was great. I thought Liverpool missed Robertson big time, though.
Yeah.
I thought the standing was okay, but Robertson just adds that little extra dimension. But from a purist point of view, fabulous game to watch. From a Manchester United point of view, happy that Chelsea drew, but we're so far behind Chelsea and Liverpool.
I know. But Phil, coming to you now.
Sorry, Phil.
Speaking on Kelleher, and to get off just how much better these two clubs are than United, I'm going to ask a question. I mean to ask you all the time because I know you've seen one of these players play intimately. That sounds like a weird way of saying that. But going forward, we have as two Irishmen and whatever Stu is, we've got a lot to look forward to, especially in the goalkeeper department. We've got what I feel is going to be two genuinely top-class goalkeepers and one who will at least be better than Darren Randolph in Mark Travers. We are like an abundance of talent, but going forward, are you sticking with Bazunu or do you think Kelleher is, I don't know what he can do because he can only play as a makeshift for Alisson if he's not playing, but he is someone that we know if he went on loan to the Championship and he's playing consistently, he could be fighting for number one. Bazunu's doing that with League One. But where do you think we're going to lean towards going forward? Because Bazunu's 19, I think now. I don't think he's 20 yet, and Kelleher's 23.
I think somebody said to me that after that Liverpool game against Chelsea, that Kelleher actually played himself out of the club, because it's getting to the point now where you can't just be sitting on the bench, if you're 23. Now, a goalkeeper's career, they can go on until they're past 40 at a reasonably high level. But it's what happens in his career now is really, really important. And he's in actually a great situation, right? Because, you're working with somebody like Alisson every day. You have some of the best coaches in England there working with you. And Liverpool's coaching setup is extremely progressive. So, they brought in a bloke from Denmark who teaches the players how to throw the ball longer.
That's right.
That's right, they're incredibly sort of, the attention to detail is fantastic. How to work with the players' footwork and that kind of thing. But Kelleher really needs games, right? And, you can still, I don't think match sharpness for goalkeepers is probably not as high as what it would be for a central midfielder, for instance. If you're a central midfielder, there's so much timing, there's so much happens so quickly around you that you need to play games to keep that up. I don't think goalkeepers need that as much, but I do think they need it. There's nothing like playing in a stadium with 50,000 people, and a corner to the opposition, and you have to organize your defense. You have to make the decision if you're going to come out and punch, collect the ball, what you're going to do. And he really, really needs that. So whether that be on loan, I hate the idea of loaning out players from the Premier League to the Championship. I would much prefer to see them go abroad. I think because partly it educates you as a player, but also as a person. So if you go on loan to Lille in France, if you Montpellier, Marseille, somewhere like that, go on loan to the Bundesliga. We've seen what that's done for some younger English players. Do something like that. Find a better move abroad there that you can take, on loan to maybe MLS a bit shitty, but there are clubs out there who need players, and get over that thing of England and Scotland being the only alternatives, because so many players not only play themselves out of a club by being too good to sit in the bench, but then they go down to a lower level. I've seen an awful lot of really good players. If you take, Jack Byrne, for instance, a great Irish creative midfielder who's playing for Shamrock Rovers, but he's not the kind of player who's going to thrive at Wigan. He's just, he's probably a little bit too small and not strong enough to thrive there. But would do in Portugal, and yet that option is never offered to them. So Kelleher needs to have a really good think about it. He will know far better than me what his options are at the club there, what's been promised to him. Because one of the things you don't get in contracts is, right, when Alisson's contract is up, we're probably going to let him go and then you'll be our first goalkeeper. And in that case, absolutely stay there, right, if that's what he's been told. Just hope that the sporting director doesn't change there. Gavin Bazunu is a tremendous footballer and an even better young man, a superb goalkeeper. Showed that in the games that he played against Portugal there. And it reminds me, Stu, you'll remember this now. Joe was probably too young and good looking for this, but old heads like you and me will remember. Wasn't it Ray Clements and Peter Shilton that alternated for England at the start of the 80s for a little while?
That's correct. And when you consider that Gary Bailey,
United keeper,
couldn't get in. He was their third choice.
They were superb, and that was just ahead of the David Seaman era. So, it's a brilliant dilemma for Ireland and for Stephen Kenny to have, because you can literally say to players, right, go, the best of you is going to get the gig, I don't believe in this idea for a national team that you have to pick the best keeper all the time, right? And there was a huge controversy here for many years in Sweden. Those who remember the 1994 World Cup, Sweden got to the semi-finals. They actually took the third place playoff there. But the goalkeeper was a guy called Thomas Ravelli, who eventually ended up playing, I think it was 141 times, insisted on playing every team game and every friendly, with the result that Lasse Eriksson is another great goalkeeper who played here in Sweden, but he also played in Portugal. He has a handful of caps, right? Now, we mentioned Kelleher playing in the League Cup for Liverpool. This guy's career was absolutely blunted by the fact that Ravelli wanted as many caps as possible. I think that you've got to pick the best player, on the day. The player who comes into your training camp on the Sunday starts on the Wednesday night. I don't think, he's lost the number one chasing. I don't think you lose it. I think it's something that the other player wins more so than you lose it. So I do think that, but we're lucky in that we have a very progressive coach in Stephen Kenny there. But it's actually a very valid point for many of the players at this point in time, Joe, because they will be considering their options. January is one of the few times. It's something I object hugely to, by the way, because if I decide that I don't want to work for Reuters or for whoever I'm working for at the moment, I can go to AP in the morning. If you're a footballer, you can only work for 2 employers in a year, right? Which is fine if you're Cristiano Ronaldo and you've all the world's millions in the bank, right? But if you're playing for Selfoss in the Icelandic second division, that's fuck all used to you, right? It happened to a friend of mine who played for FC United of Manchester, Joe Yoffel, great striker. And he was actually he was over in Selfoss, came back, had a short-term contract, and then wasn't allowed to sign for anybody else until the end of the calendar year. So really at the lower level, and the lower level, you don't have to go down too low beyond the Premier League and the Championship to find that lower level where fellas aren't making life-changing money, and contracts are short, and injuries are cruel, and you really need to give these chaps a chance. And even if you're if you're on the Manchester United academy team, at the moment, and you figure, okay, I'm better than this, I might be able to do better elsewhere. You have to have that safety net of being able to fail, of being able to go to Yeovil and say, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to dominate at this level now, and then be able to go back to a Blackburn Rovers or a Bolton Wanderers or a Wolves. And that just isn't the case at the moment. So it really is a time for thought for an awful lot of these players, and you got to choose wisely as well, because some players, a friend of mine who will remain nameless, he played professional football for nearly 20 years, and every choice he made was the wrong one. Every club he went to just was a fucking disaster, so he's no plans to be an agent. But it certainly would.
I was going to say, was this Robbie Keane? Because that kind of was his career. Every time he went to a top club, they just shit the bed or sacked the manager or just got rid of him within
So you're saying that's the Robbie Keane effect?
I'm just saying it could be part of it. But guys,
but I mean, it is. It's actually, it's not an exceptional thing to happen for players to go into that situation. The manager changes or whatever, and all of a sudden you find yourself out in the cold. And yet, what really annoys me then is you see people like Paul Pogba who leave a contract on the table. If you're not going to take the contract, Paul, say no. But again, one of the biggest clubs in the world, at least have the decency to say no and let them start to move on without you, or take the thing and shut up.
Well, we should take it up and move on, shouldn't we?
That would be my move, Stu. Definitely. Mino Raiola, I think, is his agent as well, who wouldn't be one of the most popular people. Despite the shirt behind me there, he wouldn't be one of my favourite people,
Yeah, I do think you are right, and Phil, about lower league clubs, and unfortunately, it's not a workable solution. But I think the January and summer transfer window should be abolished for League One and League Two, and all lower league clubs. There should be an easier freedom of movement for those types of players. One thing I would say though is the January transfer window this year will be quite key to a lot of players in Donny van der Beek's situation who've got aspirations of making the World Cup. So I think you will see quite a lot of movement in the next week or two in the January transfer window for big clubs.
Yep, and this is where you'll find it first, because we have to call it there now, guys. It has been another wonderful episode of the Weekend Review or Christmas Review, where we spoke very little about the actual games, and spoke mostly about everything around it, which for me is always far more interesting. So thank you to Stu, thank you to Phil. Guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Stick to the Off United Word to keep up to date with all things Manchester United and all things, once a week, all things, everything else in the Premier League. So wherever you are, hope you have a wonderful start to 2022, and we'll see you all back here next week, where we will be doing, I guess, an FA Cup review, where we'll probably not talk about the FA Cup at all.